Tissues, flip notes, part 3. Again, we left off the blood. It is a unique connective tissue because it has a fluid matrix that is outside the cells. Extracellular matrix is fluid. Actually, the cells don't even really produce this. This is just from what we ingest and is absorbed into our bloodstream. To the right, you'll see some red blood cells, erythrocytes, along with some little tiny dots that are thrombocytes or platelets, and a couple neutrophils or white blood cells. To the left there you see a really close-up picture, photomicrograph of some red blood cells, the biconcave shape. Okay, so this is where I promised we'd leave off. As Sarah gets her ear pierced, she proceeds to tell the dude with the wicked nose piercing that all the tissue layers in order he's sticking the needle through. Can you list all 6 layers so far from what we've learned? The very outer layer, of course, is epithelial tissue. And we learned the outside of our body is layered with a bunch of flattened sacs that flatten as they come up. So they're stratified or layered. So that would be stratified, flattened, squamous, epithelial. Below that, actually there's a nice cross section of stratified squamous epithelium. Below that, you hit the dermis down here. The dermis is made up of a dense connective tissue, a loose connective tissue, areolar. As I said earlier, loose connective tissue. I wish we dissected the cats because it looks just like cotton. It's so loosely organized down there. Below that, then, you would have a myriad of stuff. You could have within that dense connective tissue, you have a bunch of adipose fat. You'll have some dense connective tissue. You'll have blood vessels, of course. So let's just go for blood because we know blood feeds everything and it touches pretty much all your cells in the body except the stratified squamous epithelium. Notice blood does not get up there because if you scratch yourself just itching, you don't bleed. You got to scratch below that stratified squamous epithelium. Therefore, the stratified squamous protects. All right, so after we get through the blood and some other connective tissues, we hit the elastic cartilage of the ear. Again, you do have a little bit of fat up there, but I chose the ear because there's not much fat in the ear. So got the elastic cartilage. And coming back out the other side, we'd hit the loose connective tissue again, and the blood, of course, it's in there. And finally, out the stratified squamous epithelium. So this is super simplified. You saw that between steps 2 and 5, from loose connective to loose connective, within that, you've got the blood, you've got the fat, which I didn't put in here, the adipose, you got the elastic cartilage. So you've got a lot of stuff in there. Your body's really simply amazing. Okay. This is where you click on to watch me talk, or listen to me talk. Third major type of different tissues is the muscles. So we have 3 different types, generic types of muscles tissue. We have, we'll talk about they're made of contractile proteins. The 2 main proteins, you've got to know these proteins. Matter of fact, they're popping up here in big red, I'm sure. They're actin and myosin. Okay, they are 2 proteins which, again, perform an amazing job. Millions of tiny little myosin heads grab the actin and pull, and it would be like a bunch of ants pulling a semi-trailer down the road. That's pretty much how it works. So the myosin has little heads which grab the actin and pull it, and each one of those tiny little contractile units pulls a tiny bit, but you got thousands of those in a muscle fiber, muscle cell, and you're able to contract and lift pretty heavy loads. Okay, here's the 3 muscle types. All right, in the background, super, super nice histology of skeletal muscle. Now, skeletal is really easy to see. You see all the layers, the fibers there, the muscle cells are parallel. They all run parallel. They are striated. See those little stripes going up and down? That's your actin and myosin, where the actin and myosin cross and pull those cross bridges together. And then all the nuclei are shoved on the outside, but you can see there's a whole lot of nuclei per cell. Each one of those long strands going from left to right or right to left is a cell. So you got a whole lot of nuclei. So when you look at this, you'll be able to tell it's a skeletal muscle. So we have skeletal muscle. They make up roughly 40% of your body weight. Unless you're Arnold Schwarzenegger, then it's more. Or me, then it's probably a lot less. They're under voluntary control. You tell them to move, and they move. They don't just usually go on their own unless it's a twitch. They have many nuclei per cell, and they are striated due to the actin and myosin fibers going across, as well as the little what we call Z band, that line going down the actin and myosin are attached to. So what you really see is the Z line. Smooth muscle. In the background here, you have a smooth muscle. You can see they look very smooth. They're elongated. They have one big nuclei per cell, and they line the hollow organs like your intestines. They're actually found in your skin and the eyes. Your iris is a smooth muscle. You don't tell it to contract when sunlight hits it. It just does to keep the amount of light coming in at a minimum. They're involuntary. You can't tell them what to do. There's one nucleus per cell, and they're not striated. You don't see stripes on these guys. Finally, we have cardiac muscle. Cardiac muscle, you'll see in the cartoon on the left and the actual picture on the right, is branched. They all connect. And there's a reason for that. You want them all to connect, so all your muscles, it's an all or none thing. The heart, it beats or it doesn't. It should beat or should not all at the same time. So they all contract at the same time. There's not multiple contractions. Otherwise, you'd have what they call fibrillation, and that's not good. Atrial fibrillation, you've heard of AFib, not a good thing. So yeah, they're all cross-branched. They beat at the same time, and they are striated. If you look closely, you can see the little stripes in there. So cardiac means heart. It's involuntary, but striated. So you don't tell your heart to beat. I joke around with people. They got their earbuds in. I hear it saying, breathe in, breathe out. We don't think about breathing. Breathing is a cool thing. We can voluntarily make ourselves breathe, but we can breathe while we're sleeping without thinking about it. That's a couple different parts of the brain to be discussed in psychology because I don't have time in anatomy. There are intercalated discs. Intercalated, fancy word meaning shuffled in there. So throughout, you've got these discs just kind of stuck at random. Well, they're really not at random, but to us it appears random. Finally, come to nervous tissue. Nervous tissue is made up of the brain and the nerves. And nerves communicate via or by way of electrical signals. And you know what those electrical signals are called? Those electrical signals are called action potentials. So if you've had psychology, you know what action potential is. It's just a depolarization of the membrane that travels from one end to the other. It travels fast. It's responsible for coordination and control of all your body's activities. Remember, the brain is the control center. Okay, a neuron has three basic cell parts that we break it into. You got your axons, your dendrites, and your nucleus. So the cell body contains the nucleus. Yeah, the nucleus is in the cell body. Sorry, I said nucleus, but yeah, the cell body is the main thing. It has dendrites branching off it to receive action potentials. They're the receiving end. The axon carries it all the way down to its ends to release little molecules which will make your muscles twitch. So it's a long insulated end, and it carries the action potential. That insulation is called the myelin sheath. Myelin is kind of like the insulator around your electrical cords. You can touch an electrical cord and not get shocked because the electricity stays inside there. Same with the myelin sheath, keeps it in. If you get little cuts or sclera in that myelin sheath, you get what you call multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis is just little nicks in that myelin sheath. So the electrical signal seeps out, and the nerves don't quite make the muscles work like they should. Oh, got ahead of myself. So yeah, multiple sclera, many cuts in the myelin sheath cause the short called multiple sclerosis. Wow, that's big and bold and red. That's good to know. Tissue membranes. Mucus is your friend. So they're mucous membranes. Okay, these are not types of tissue anymore. These are talking about tissue membranes. We've got our 4 types of tissue knocked out of the way: epithelial, nervous, muscular, and connective. So now we're talking about membranes in general. Mucous membranes are those which line an epithelial tissue. Within it has these things called goblet cells or mucous neck cells, 2 different types, and they produce mucus. Goblet cell. Ooh, they're goblets in red. What do you know about that? So goblet cells produce mucus. Why is mucus good? Because it traps junk in the air, and our cilia, in our pseudostratified ciliated epithelial that line our respiratory tract, carries that mucus down to our stomach, which produces acid, which helps kill most of that bacteria and virus that gets carried down there. Oh yeah, mucous neck cells. Boom. So here's a picture, really nice diagram of some goblet cells which produce mucus. This happens to be, looks like, in the microvilli of the small intestine. Yes, your small intestine is lined with mucus. Keeps it smooth, lets things slide through. The serous membranes, you know these already. They are simple squamous epithelium, very thin layer of epithelium, sitting on top of loose connective tissue, and they act like Teflon, basically, remember, to keep friction free inside, like the pleura membranes around the lungs, the pericardium around the heart, and the peritoneum around the abdominal organs. Remember those, they're good to know. Various other membranes line the body also. There's other serous membranes around the bones. What would you call a serous membrane around the bone? Pericardium around heart. Around bone. How about periosteo for bone? Periosteum. Boom. That's good to know. Hey, big bold red words too. Again, this is like another language, but it's good to know. Once you get this basic, this foundation, the rest of the semester and the rest of the year will be a lot easier. Inflammation occurs when tissues are damaged. The suffix itis means inflammation. If you have appendicitis, your appendix is inflamed. If you have tonsillitis, your tonsils are inflamed. 5 major symptoms with inflammation. You could probably guess most of these right off the bat, but you know when you're inflamed, there's usually redness and swelling. There's pain involved, and a little bit of heat. If you ever feel inflammation of a sore in your hand or arm, it feels warm. And there's a disturbance of function. You can't really swallow when you got tonsillitis. It hurts. I mean, you can, it just hurts. Tissue repair. Okay. Now talking about how tissues repair themselves. Different types of tissues repair differently. We can substitute viable for dead cells through regeneration, which is going on the outside of your body right now. When I look at you, what I see mostly is dead stuff. The outside of your body is all covered with dead, stratified squamous epithelial tissues. They're constantly regenerating underneath. If I scratch you or you scratch yourself, some cells fluff off, and that's just dust. If you should walk by too fast by a desk and cut yourself and it bleeds, as long as it's not too deep, that stratified squamous epithelium will regenerate and close that gap, and a year from now, you'll never see the scar. If it's too big of a gap and you don't totally close with stratified squamous epithelium, here we go, there's an example I'm talking about. If it's too big of a gap, though, you get replacement. Instead of the stratified squamous epithelium, the connective tissue underneath comes in, you get a dense connective tissue, causing a scar. Such as this young man here, tore his hand up. Or my buddy Sam Juan Rohr here, tore his arm up in football, left a pretty scar there. There are 3 tissue types based on the ability to provide and produce new cells. There's the labile, which is what you see with stratified squamous epithelium, constantly reproducing, regenerating, constantly. There's the stable, okay, skin and mucous membranes, everything on the outside. When you swallow stuff, you're scratching off cells. There's the stable cells, which don't continue to divide, but can divide after injury. So your connective tissue is not continually dividing, but you cut yourself deep, you'll heal up. And then there's permanent, what we call permanent cells, little or no ability to divide. I say little there because science has come a long way in finding that there is some regeneration